So this is a video I've been debating making for a while. Being neurodivergent is something I have talked about briefly in a few of my videos and mentioned several times on my community post feed, but it's not something I've ever really engaged with directly like this. The main reason I've gone back and forth on whether or not I should make it is because I don't actually have a diagnosis yet. I've done a lot of research and I've been told by several people I'm friends with and several adults, many of whom are autistic, that I exhibit those traits. I'm currently trying to pursue a diagnosis via my on-campus resources, but it obviously costs quite a bit of money and I'm not financially independent yet, so that's still up in the air. And I won't deny that there's a bit of risk in labeling myself this way. I haven't made a ton of videos before that go into a bunch of detail on my personal life in a non-fandom context. There's some people who might say that making a video like this could hurt my career prospects, or someone might use it to hurt me personally. But for some reason this week I felt particularly called to make this video, and I haven't really had much time to make anything lately beyond just little snippets of either me doing music major stuff or screaming into the void about the state of the world. So when I feel like I have the bandwidth to do something, chances are I'm gonna take the bite. I've seen a lot of videos pop up in my recommendations by neurodivergent people talking about their experiences in certain career fields and how they struggled because they felt like their career field was not designed for them to succeed, which, to be fair, is going to be most career fields because we live in a neurotypical dominated world. And I haven't really seen one of those videos pop up for musical theater, so seeing as I've been having a lot of thoughts lately trying to articulate how being autistic affects the way I move in this field, I thought I'd make a video about it. So I've always known that there was something quite different about me. Most of the autistic people I know find me quite clockable, including my boyfriend, who is a diagnosed autistic person and has repeatedly told me that I am more obviously autistic than he is. But growing up, I was always a very friendly person. I always did very, very well in school, both of which are for the most part still true, so I was never really seen by most adults, including doctors, as someone with any sort of support needs. So I'm still sort of adjusting to the idea of thinking of myself as a person with a disability. But being in the musical theater collegiate environment has sort of made it a lot more clear to me some of the ways in which I struggle. So I go to quite a prestigious college musical theater program, and I come from a very small high school in the South where most of the theater kids were shy, awkward, neurodivergent geeks who were into D&D and anime. And I experienced quite a culture shock when I got to college because here, the musical theater kids are the popular kids. They're at the top of the social ladder. So for various reasons in high school, I basically didn't fit in socially at all until my senior year. So I was so excited for college because I thought I was going to find my people. But instead, I get here and all of a sudden my peers are people who do pageants and are in sororities and have these very sort of Instagram-friendly lives, and it was just not the kind of people I was used to being around at all. And the way some of these people talked, it was just like every conversation was an audition. It was also media trained, and I felt a lot of pressure to live up to that. A lot of my classmates came from these big cosmopolitan cities or really prominent arts high schools, or they'd been nominated for Jimmy Awards. Meanwhile, I'm from this small town. My self-esteem had been severely damaged in the aftermath of the college audition process, and I was so desperate not to be the big fish in a small pond. I needed to prove that I deserved to be here. Music composition was such a huge creative outlet for me as a freshman because I didn't get cast until second semester of my sophomore year, so it was a way of claiming control over myself as an artist. If no one else is going to put me on stage, I'm going to make my own stuff and it's going to be mine and no one can take that from me. And all of this ended up being incredibly isolating. And during the times when I would come out of my room, come out of my study hole, I would look around and realize, oh, the cliques have all formed without me. That doesn't really have a whole lot to do with being autistic. I mean, I suppose the sort of like obsessive, hyper-focused, workaholic tendencies kind of do. I mainly just wanted to like contextualize the situation I was in for a lot of my first half of college. For the record, I'm not alone. I have a few great friends in my major, and I have a lot of friends in the instrumental and composition departments, which is kind of where all of the awkward weirdos like myself tend to end up, and they're great because I don't feel like I have to perform all the time around them. But yeah, I really wasn't prepared for how tough the social aspect of this major was going to be, and I spent a lot of my first 2 years feeling like a failure, because if I couldn't fit in with the people who were supposed to be like me, who wanted to do the same thing as me, then I was just never gonna fit in anywhere. So most of the people around me growing up would say I'm an extrovert because I'm very friendly and I love to perform, but I've actually discovered in college that I'm quite a shy person. I stay in my room basically all the time. I've still never been to a single college party. And one of the really big things about being an autistic person in musical theater is how overstimulating so many aspects of the field are. So something about me that I didn't really realize until I came to a school that has so much going on all the time, is that I find it extremely taxing, literally just to go see a show. Both because it's often very late and a very loud and overstimulating environment, and because a lot of times for me, it's an environment that causes me to spiral. It was often very difficult for me to find people to go see shows with, so a lot of times I would end up having to go alone, and I would go there and it would be so loud, and I would see everyone else with their friends, and it felt like I was the only person who didn't have someone to go with, and the voices in my brain would just get so loud. That, of course, would be compounded by the fact that I hadn't been cast yet, and so I would have to watch all these people that I would have to see every single day performing these roles that I wanted that I didn't get, and doing better than I ever imagined I was capable of doing, and the rejection-sensitive dysphoria would just eat me alive. There was one particular experience I had earlier this year. It was our main stage season opener. It was a show I'd gotten called back for, but didn't get into. I got into a different show. I got into Drowsy Chaperone, and we were in the throes of rehearsals for that at the time, and we'd had rehearsals all that morning, and I'd only had a break for like an hour and a half, and I was exhausted. And because I was exhausted, I was really emotionally vulnerable. So I go to see the show, I go by myself, I'm in like the top layer of the balcony because that's where the cheaper student tickets are. So most of my classmates are up there. I'm surrounded by people and I'm all alone, and it's really loud. And it's a super high energy show, so the applause breaks after every single song are ear-splitting, or at least they felt like it to me. And instead of being able to enjoy the show, which was very good, I was absolutely miserable. I was just sitting there biting my lip, trying not to cry. Every time there was an applause break, I would just cover my ears and curl up into a ball. During intermission, I remember just sort of pacing around in the lobby, staring into space, you know, the way autistic people do. And the house manager sees me and asks if I'm okay. And I just burst into tears. I have to be really careful about seeing shows because if I'm too tired and I haven't been regulating my emotions properly, I run the risk of having a breakdown. And I feel so guilty that this is a problem for me because supporting my classmates is really important. Expanding my artistic repertoire is really important. I feel like I'm being a bad citizen of the artistic community when I don't go see a show because I'm too tired. I hate that this thing that is supposed to be fun has become this Herculean physical and emotional task for me. And I'll see Facebook posts from my classmates who are more popular or more well-adjusted and probably neurotypical about going to see shows off campus, you know, for fun, just for fun. And I'm like, you guys are seeing shows for fun? Like, I barely have time and, like, emotional bandwidth to see the shows that I feel obligated to see because my classmates are in them. I get very overwhelmed by, like, the zeitgeist of it all and all of the trends that I feel like I have to keep up with. So I'm someone who my sort of sensory threshold is very much dependent on my emotional state. if I'm in like a good mood, I can handle a lot, but if I'm feeling really emotionally vulnerable, I get overwhelmed very easily. And another time I had one of these moments was when I was in choir, and our teacher that day decided that we were all going to warm up individually. And everyone was doing like their own scales and sirens and things, and they were all overlapping on top of each other and bouncing off the walls, and it was really loud, and everyone else was having fun. They were having a good time and laughing, and to me it was like actual torture. It was like the screams of hell. And I was standing there frozen, staring into space. Like I said, every time I opened my mouth, I felt like I was going to cry. Eventually, it got to a point where I was just standing there shaking my hands on my mouth, like about to have like a panic attack. And finally, one of my classmates asked if I was okay. I said no, I most certainly was not. And she took me out of the room and let me go get a glass of water. And it took me maybe like 3 minutes to calm down. Now, artistically, I think the area in which being autistic has affected me the most has been dance. And I realized this year that it's actually a lot less me not having good technique than it is a mental processing thing and me getting really overwhelmed by all of the people in the room and not being able to process all of the instructions. Tap classes, oh my god, all of the metal bouncing on the walls and high tinny sounds, and it's terrible. And this makes me spiral. I get stuck in a rut and try to process all of the information, and it just doesn't work, and I just stand there and I get really, really angry with myself, sometimes to the point of hurting myself. Something that I really struggle with that's kind of related is this idea that I won't be castable for the roles I want, the roles I feel like I should be a good fit for, because the way I sing and the way I look don't align with the way I move. So I have this very strong, mature voice, and I'm like a decently attractive person. So people would think I'm like a sophisticated leading lady, I feel like, until they see me move and they're like, oh, she's a dork, she's an awkward nerd, we don't want her. I'm not like a naturally graceful person. I don't move the way that most of the girls in my class move. I've got really tense limbs and claw hands, and I'm really stimmy. And that affects the way I perform, you know? It affects the way I dance. And like, I've tried to control that as much as possible, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's just always going to be how I am. And I've spent so much time feeling like the way that I physically exist in the world is wrong. And you're like, oh, there's awkward characters, there's characters who move like you, but I feel like so often they cast people who aren't actually awkward, who are just like good at performing this like polished, crafted idea of awkwardness, rather than people who actually move like that. Another thing that autistic people run into a lot is that we are so terrified of not being understood, and a lot of times this would affect my acting and make me get really intense and really seem like I was like trying a bit too hard, and my teachers would be like, you're so expressive, you don't have to do so much, and I'd be like, no, the audience must understand every single nuance I am trying to get across with this character. I'm a very physical actor. I want to do things with my hands, I want to move, I want to make big, bold choices. But then when I tried to do all that, because my body is the way it is, it wouldn't look as good as when other people did it, and so it would get perceived as unnatural, and I would be told I was doing too much and that I needed to do less and just be still. And I felt like because the way I moved was perceived as strange to people, they would rather me just not move at all. I've now booked 3 principal roles at my university, so I know now I'm doing something right, but I struggled so long with feeling like I didn't deserve to be part of this industry. Like, I wasn't castable because the way I moved wasn't this perfect, polished Broadway idea of what a body is meant to move like. I struggled a lot with this during my Shakespeare intensive, feeling like the way I moved, the way I performed my monologues was wrong because it didn't look as clean as some of my classmates did. I struggled a lot this summer with that, with the Shakespeare intensive, because I felt like my movements weren't as clean or polished as some of my classmates, and what my boyfriend would always tell me was, you just look like a person. You just look like you're moving like yourself, and that's what you're supposed to do as an actor. And I feel like we forget that. I feel like we get so obsessed with trying to fit into this Broadway mold that we forget to just be people, and that it's okay not to look It's okay not to be beautiful all the time. Like that's fine, that's human. And I've been doing so much deconstructing of this idea in my mind, because every time I get cast or a teacher says something complimentary about me, I've been trying to tell myself, maybe it's okay to talk like you. Maybe it's okay to move like you. There is nothing unnatural about being you. Now, of course, there are some people who might think I'm hurting my chances of fitting into the industry by labeling myself in this way, that I'm making myself too niche by labeling myself as autistic. But the thing about this industry is it's so oversaturated, and there are already so many people who are trying to be this carbon copy, cookie cutter idea of what they think a musical theater performer is supposed to be. So I actually think embracing myself, embracing my flaws, embracing my disability, embracing the way I move and act and think is actually in my best interest, because there's only one me. And I think they're more likely to remember me if I'm me than if I'm trying to be someone else. That was a very emotionally taxing video to make, so in order to end things on a bit of a lighter note, I would like to list off a few musical theater characters that I think are definitely autistic. Every character from Ride the Cyclone, every character from 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, most characters from William Finn shows, actually. I actually totally agree with Remy Karamloo about the Phantom being autistic. He literally just plays Final Lair as a meltdown, which is so slay and correct of him. Definitely Dawn from Waitress! Henry Higgins, that is the only reasonable explanation as to why he is like that. We do not claim him, though. Unless it is the imaginary version of Henry Higgins played by David Tennant that exists in my head. Portia and Nigel from Something Rotten. I Love the Way is the most bonding over your special interest love song ever. Pierre! Orpheus! Oh my god! When you're so hyperfixated, your girlfriend gets kidnapped. Elphaba is autistic to me! Let Elphaba stim! I haven't seen the movie yet. Maybe this happens. Seymour. My precious baby Chumley from Operation Mincemeat, which most of you probably haven't seen yet unless you live in the UK, but it's getting a Broadway transfer next year, which I am very, very happy about because it is probably my favorite musical of the 2020s. That's about it. I hope you guys... This was a bit of a heavy video for me, but I hope you guys, got something out of it. I hope you related to it if you've experienced something similar to this. I hope it inspires you to keep being your wonderful, weird, autistic self, regardless of what career field you are into. I love you all. You guys are such a supportive, wonderful community, and it's because of the incredibly kind responses I've gotten to previous videos I've made that I felt like I'd make something really personal like this. Toodles.